Hi, everyone. Getting myself all arranged still. Sorry, I wasn't ready when the show started. I thought I better punch the button, though, even if you saw me arranging my desk. My trusty cup of tea and my glasses and my pen and other things. I'm so glad that you're with us today. I'm Martha Novak, and this is a show called Real Talk with Martha Novak. And we're talking today about a really interesting subject to me, which are the habits of chronically, perpetually miserable people. We all have these things. We're all unhappy from time to time, but we're listening to a show like this because we want to be happier. And we also know that consciousness is the key to that, or we suspect it. So I have found an interesting article on Thrive Global called 7 Habits of Highly Miserable People. This is by a woman named Tamara Starr, who is described as guide, speaker, author, and founder, and she's written a book called The 40-Day Personal Reboot. I don't know anything about her. I'm going to give you a lot more than 7 habits, by the way, today. And I'm also going to talk to you about how to fix them, because the only problem that I think we have with a lot of information on the internet is they don't tell you how to fix it. How do you fix your thinking? How do you fix this, whatever this is? So we're going to talk about that today in a lot of detail. I urge you, please, to get pen and paper so you can make some notes, because I'm going to sling a lot of things at you today, which is what I'm supposed to do. However, when something is enormously challenging to your habits, and you have developed these habits to keep you safe and protected, this can fly in the face of that, and all of a sudden you won't remember any of them. And certainly you won't remember what to do instead of what you've been doing, because that requires commitment and change and deliberation and choice and a lot of things that really challenge some of this that we're talking about today in terms of what you've been perpetually doing. We all do this. Keep in mind that the egoic child's mind, no matter what kind of childhood we had, is well, hello, Kat, and oh, hello, Randy. Randy's my cousin. I'm so glad that you all are tuned in today. Thank you so much. So we all make ourselves miserable with old ways of thinking. We don't realize that these are not good for us, and there are other choices because we've been doing them since we were little kids, right? So we're going to talk about the better choices today, because if you do enough of these, you have a rather unhappy life. Now, most people either do that or they go back and forth between several of these. So they are happy sometime and not happy other times. So if that's you, and that's, I think, most people, we must challenge the way we're doing things, the old ways of doing things, the old ways of looking at things, and make better choices for ourselves. And guys, I want to put on the table, and you'll hear me talking about this a little later in the show and mentioning it again and again, and that is that change is inevitable. What you want, your happiness, your abundance, your love, your whatever, it's not in the comfort zones that you created out of these old habits from the past. No, they're not. So we need to get very comfortable with change. How to do that? Well, opening consciousness is a big one, because we've got to realize that all change is good, even if it feels bad. You see, it's the child's mind that says anything that feels bad is terrible and it's going to last forever. There are reasons for that. You can hear about those reasons in other shows that we all think that way. But is it true? It absolutely is not. Change is good. It's the movement of God. It's taking us into what we want. And the irony is we say we want these things, and yet when change appears, and it's not the way the ego child's mind thinks that change should appear, that's called control, we resist. And it's trying to take us to what we want. Isn't that ironical? Just the way human nature works. But you all are listening to this show to do something different. And that is to go from the ego, child's mind, fear-based self to the higher self, the love-based self, and the self that creates things in a much better order and fashion, and does it from quite the love-centered, cooperative, and deliberate place of consciousness. Now, as usual, we're going to pray in just a minute. That's as usual, too. But as usual, I've taken some of these articles, like this article, The 7 Habits of Highly Miserable People, and I've changed it a little bit. You've got to understand that a lot of psychologists and PhDs are talking in a particular speak, which is not my language. My language is to teach you about consciousness. There's a lot of psychology to it, but the language is completely different because the end result is different, you see. So I find sometimes in these articles that I present to you that the language is not precise in terms of consciousness. That didn't mean anything is wrong with the articles of these brilliant people's mind that writes them. I wouldn't be bringing that to you if I didn't agree. But we need to clean up the language for us so that we understand this and we're on the same page, okay? All right, so let's do a quick prayer and then I'm going to launch into all this. I am live today. The guest call-in number is 347-850-1647. 347-850-1647. As usual, because of my technology, I'm going to say I certainly hope I can bring you online. We'll do our best. And we certainly hope our technology holds. One note, if you're new to me, and that is on my website, www.marthanovak.com. Under radio shows, there is a little button you can push to listen to the live show on Facebook Live or on Blog Talk Radio. Sometimes we have to toggle between the two, although I don't want to jinx it today, but our technology has stayed up for the last 3 or 4 weeks, so let's hope for the best, even though it's been a little raggedy. We have the fastest speed we can possibly get up here. Problem is, they don't offer a faster speed. So, we're doing the best we can here. All right, quick prayer. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are and all everything is in this world, we thank you so much as we open ourselves now to hear what you have to say to us through these words and other words that may happen today as people write in, as people call in. We thank you so much for this information and for us all standing under the banner of wanting to know more about ourselves and about you, which is all the same thing. We appreciate so much the ability to transcend, ultimately, our egoic child's minds and get our issues out of the way and see clearly. It's what consciousness has been about from time immemorial. We are thankful for the way the system works and for our lives just as they are, even if we do want things to change. And we open ourselves now to see, hear, sense, and know what you would have us do beyond what we think we know. We surrender knowing anything, that is you through us and through all things that know it all and will be communicating with us during these 90 minutes. We thank you so much, dear God, and we open ourselves to this and all. And say this in your name and in the name of the Ascended Masters, our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of each and every person listening to the show today. Thank you. And so it is. Amen. Look, we all have bad days, right? We do. We have bad days. We have good days. We have times that we're happier and times that we're not. The interesting thing is there's a pathology connected to chronically, perpetually unhappy people. Now, chronically, one of the things I want you to understand about those words is the reason there's a chronicity is because there's a perpetuation. we don't realize most of the time, without a great deal of self-awareness, which requires introspection, which requires change, which requires probably seeing somebody who can teach you otherwise, because the ego child's mind's trying to keep you right, in its little clutches. It says, I'm the only thing that keeps you safe. It's propaganda from the ego child's mind. That's just simply not true. You learned a certain way to survive in your household. You saw what other people were doing, etc., etc., etc. And now it's time to learn something else. Because before you're 7 or 8 years old, your sole purpose is to try to survive. Now, it is to understand consciousness, to be happy, to be enlightened if we go far enough. Our desires and purposes have changed, and that's a good thing. It shows that you're growing and evolving as you should. Still yet, what this show is about are little things, little glitches that hold us. And when I say there's a pathology attached to this, if we say, I feel I am feeling unhappy today, that's very different from I am unhappy. You are defining yourself as I am unhappy. You've crossed a line. It's what you've become, not what you're momentarily feeling. So the first thing I want to say to you is to clean up how you talk about this. Clean it up. Don't say something that's a pronouncement on your life. Your subconscious mind, dears, is literal. Here's what you have to say. Here's what you have to think and feel. And it puts that out energetically. You've got to be very careful of what you do. Now, before we actually get into some of this woman's points, and I'm going to add a lot more. Now, some of these I found in other articles on the internet, so I'm not quoting the articles, but I'm going to quote some of these habits. So we're going to go far beyond 7 today, but we're going to start with, what was her name? Oh, Tomorrow Stars for 7, because I think they're good. But before we begin, I'm going to give you some general impressions that I have. Well, hello, Julia. Well, I'm so glad that you're watching today. She said this is the first time she's catching Facebook Live. We're delighted that you're with us. Thank you. So here are some of the feelings that I have very much about misery and about making ourselves happier. Number 1, there is a difference between response and reaction. We react to life when we are working from our past and coming from our ego child's mind issues. We are responding to life when we have a choice, when we say, oh, okay, I can respond as my ego child's mind would, but I also have now other intelligences working for me, and I have many options and many choices here, and I'm going to make a very helpful one for myself and for others. So that becomes everything. And I think it's the key to happiness. It's not what happens to you. Life happens, guys. People come and go. People die, God forbid, but they do. Animals do. We have to be adaptable in life. And the adaptability is determined by how well we respond, or in the lower energy forms from our ego child's mind that are not working in your best interest. Just came back. Hello, Michelle. Good to have you with us today, darling. The second point I want to make, this is my point, is the key to all of this is to become self-aware. That doesn't mean self-absorbed. That means self-aware. Listen to what you're thinking. Know what you're feeling. Know why you are doing something. You see, it isn't what we do. It is our motivation for doing it. For example, if we are just a social butterfly and we want to connect, are we doing it to attach because we're afraid to be alone, or we are still relating ourselves to the dependent child we used to be? And is this an attachment instead of a true connection, which is more of a give and take? Now, that's just an example. We have to be aware of what is motivating us, you see? And sometimes that really does take introspection. It doesn't sometimes take introspection. It is essential to where you all want to go. Number 3, we need to move. We need to move mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. This is evolvement, but of course it requires change. And if you're not comfortable with change, oh, Jay. Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you, darling. Oh, Jay, it's wonderful. Aloha to you too. It's wonderful to hear from you again. I haven't heard from you in a long time. All right. So we have to be willing to move mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. What do I mean by that? Well, you have to think new thoughts, feel new feelings, do things that are new physically, and I think entertain deeper and more profound spiritual ideas. You know, for example, I was reared as a Presbyterian, by the way. Sang in a Baptist choir, went to an Episcopal school, had a lot of Jewish friends. The God I was reared with is very different from the God that I believe in now, and the one that gives me comfort. I think it's very important for us to question these things and to entertain new ideas. And that's what I mean. We need different perspectives on everything. If you are doing these things, kudos to you. Now, you keep in mind, it's not just mental thought, however, or emotional feeling about this. We actually need to implement some of the changes that we're going to talk about today. Change is good. And it is our reaction to change in our ego child's mind that makes it chaos or makes it bad. And for years, as I've been working with individual clients, I've seen that people arrange it so you can't touch them, because you'll see exactly what they're doing. They're throwing themselves into terrible situations perpetually. They're making themselves chronically unhappy. Instead of them going, oh, I see what I'm doing. Oh my gosh, you're right. Let's change. How do I change? Let's put those things in place. They go, oh, don't, I can't take it. Oh, no, I can't. All that histrionic, all that drama, which is going to lead me to the next point, doesn't allow you to go in and get it and for people to change quickly. So I want to put on the table, the fourth thing is that unhappy people in my book perpetuate drama. And because this is a habitual thing, it is normalized for us, right? And we don't even see it as drama. So we've got to really confront that. And I do that constantly with clients of mine. You know, they'll come in and they'll make a statement like, oh my God, you know, it was just so traumatic that my car got scratched in the parking lot. It was the most trauma. I mean, who would do that? And they're, you know, look, your car got scratched in the parking lot. You can make it a drama, or you can go and get your car fixed when you have the money to do so. What the heck? You see? Now, we've talked in other shows about primary emotions and secondary emotions. Primary, you know, emotions are the ones that should be connected to that car. You might be a little pissed off your car got scratched. That happened to me in the parking lot up here. All right? Nobody I know did it. And thank God it wasn't very deep, so we found a little product that rubbed it out. Oh, good for us, you know. We talked to our friends about it. They said, you need this product. So we got one. Did the trick. But we've got to stop taking things so personally. A lot of shows that we have done before now talk about these things. The Cognitive Distortions show and many other things. Everything that I say to you guys feeds into everything I say to you. So please, please study these things. We have several study groups that have been formed around some of these teachings. They listen to these shows, they talk about it, they discuss it, they call me. I'm delighted. Please do that. That's a wonderful thing to help you think differently. All right. Concerning drama, you've got to know you're being dramatic before you can confront the drama. And that's sometimes the power of a guide, a coach, because they can say, excuse me, that's over the top dramatic. So you go, oh yes, I realize. So let's talk about what the truth is. My car got scratched. All right. Anything else? No, my car got scratched. Okay, now what do we want to do about it? I'm pissed off because my car got scratched. That's fine too, to be pissed off because your car got scratched. But that, oh, this is just the biggest affront in the world, not appropriate. That's in the secondary emotions. So I want you to go back and listen to that show as well. Now let's dive into the things that Tamara Starr, isn't that a lovely name, says are the 7 habits. Honey, there are a lot more than 7. We're going to give you that. By the way, I hope I will finish this show in an appropriate amount of time. If not, I'll have it go over to next week. What I don't want to do with this material is go too fast. I want to go quickly so that you thoroughly understand it, however. But I don't want to go so fast that you don't really get it. So that's why I recommend you're writing some of this down. And certainly these shows are archived on Blog Talk Radio, on Facebook Live, and on YouTube. They go right to YouTube, and you can listen to it again and make your notes then. All right, here are the 7 qualities, she says, of chronically unhappy people. The first one is their default belief is that life is hard. I do agree with that. Their default belief is that life is hard. I want to go over, you're going to see me turning a lot of pages. Not only do they find and really believe that life is hard, but they stop when it gets hard. These are folks that have not learned to work through problems. They are caught, we call it a fixation, but nobody ever tells us what a fixation is. Fixation is a fixation of energy at a certain point in your development. And we all have them, and we can all let them go once we resolve them. But if you think you're going to resolve them by ignoring them or avoiding them, that's not true. They're always going to be there, and they're always going to surface if you cannot find the resolution in them. And that's what a coach is supposed to do, helps you resolve these things so you can go on. Now, instead of being able to work through a problem, they will become distraught or frozen. I had someone tell me the other day that when something comes up that's not in her fantasy plan, she freezes. And then she tells herself that she doesn't know what to do. Now, she didn't know what to do when she was a little girl, but she does now. And because she is fixated back at that time, she can't release herself into the present. So she becomes, if you will, the victim of circumstance. You see, all of these things lead to victimhood. All of this thinking does lead to victimhood. She focuses on not having any control. What does that do for her in the ego child's mind? It makes her exert more control, trying to exert more control, or withdraw and isolate to soothe herself so she can go out the next day and try to exert more control. Okay. This is all in that secondary patterning, secondary emotions, because what's being left out here is, what can I do about the problem? How can we fix this? You see? And chronically unhappy people take these problems in everyday life and convince themselves, they use it as evidence that there's no point in doing anything, that they have no real control over anything. And that makes them feel even more insecure. You know, I think that happy people know that life can be hard, and we go through life having a positive attitude about everything until life throws us a curveball, and then we deal with it. Instead of going into victimhood, we have an attitude of curiosity versus the victimhood, curiosity and kind of a how-to spirit. By the way, you're not expected to know everything, but someone around you does. You know, when my computer breaks, I don't know what to do, but I ask my husband, and if my husband doesn't know, then we go to Micro Center or one of the big computer stores and ask them. Somebody knows around you. Now, that doesn't mean that we access our power right away. I think it's really important that we try to figure things out. But the truth is, some things are just beyond us. It's not in my bailiwick. You see what I do? Okay. I think happy people, under this default belief that life is hard, I think they do something different here. And that is they take responsibility for themselves. They take responsibility for getting themselves into a situation. Now, Ms. or Doctor, I don't know which one she is, Star, and I see we have a caller, so I'll be going to 917 in just a minute. She says that not only do they take responsibility, but they focus on getting themselves out of it as soon as possible. And I don't like that for consciousness. I don't like that statement, the way that's written. Now, you keep in mind there's nothing wrong with the way she wrote it for the people that are psychologically reading this article, and it's written for the masses. But in terms of consciousness, and the reason I'm even saying this to you instead of going right to my point is that I don't think it's so important to get you out of it. That's a child's mind thing. I think it's important for you to learn something from it and then take the appropriate steps. So I would rewrite that for consciousness, because I see people coming to me and they want to be conscious, but they're still like little kids in the corner, kicking and screaming and saying, I'm in the corner and you leave me alone and all that kind of stuff. And I want to get out of the corner, and you reach the hand down to help them out of the corner and they won't take it. I'm sorry, there is a lot of emotional baggage that goes with this belief that life is hard. Okay? And you need to find out what it is. And you got to find out that being depressed, being sad, being a lot of these feelings that we consider negative, which are just reactions to things, are actually not going to kill us. And when we're trying hard to get out of something, I would suspect that there is a little secret issue hidden that I've got to, it's going to kill me. We can't, oh my God, chaos. We've got to find out chaos is all right. How are you going to prove it to yourself if you don't sit there with it? Now, I don't mean indulge. That's drama. I do mean that you learn from it, that you sit there, that you observe it, that you find out, that you're self-aware, that you find out what motivated this and why you got into it and how you're going to get yourself out in a step-by-step way, and that you're learning as you go. I'm sure she's probably implying that, but I'm a bit, I would rather the words be more precise. I think there's got to be deliberation. You've heard me talk about cooperation and deliberation. I think there's got to be a great deal of deliberation in problem solving. Because if there's not, we complain, over the circumstances, and that is the symptom, certainly, of an unhappy person. So I think that really making some deliberate steps, and if I don't know what they are, I'm going to ask somebody what they think, and then I will make my decision from it. Now, how do you fix the default belief that life is hard? Well, I think you need to listen to your victimhood. I think you need to hear it. I think you need to listen to the way you think and how you feel and how you speak to other people. I think you need to realize that this is part of your story, and you need to stop telling that story over and over again, because your subconscious mind does hear it and doesn't argue back, by the way. I want to put on the table one thing before we move to our next our caller, and that is that people who have come from lousy circumstances have done remarkable things in life, but they don't think of themselves as victims. Now here you've got a choice, right? You can perpetuate the victim, or you can see what else you can do and how you can add value to your life and to the world. People that are victims don't create great things. People who are victims, by the very definition of victim, have to stay victims. That's just so much drama. Nobody's a victim. Nobody is. We all have the power of our minds and our perspective in our minds to think differently about things. We must, to survive hardship, by the way. Now, certainly, I'm not talking about some of the major problems in the world. I'm just talking about the individuals right in front of me right now, okay? I don't solve problems of the world. I'm just here doing my thing for the individual. And for businesses, that's what I do. So please don't think I'm talking about all people in the world and the horrible things that are going on out there. I'm well aware of that. But you, my dears, you all are not victims. And we need to change our thinking, and we need to hear ourselves that we try to make ourselves that. Okay? All right. Let's go, please, to our caller. This is a 917 exchange. Hello, this is Martha Novak. To whom am I speaking? Hi, you there? Hello? Well, actually, I'm going to leave this line open. I don't know whether someone is listening on it or not, but I'm certainly not getting a voice. So there we are. And still there's noise on it. I will close it out at that time, but we'll leave it open. All right. Now let's move on to the next point. Number 2. Chronically miserable people believe that other people cannot be trusted. Now, you have heard me say in other shows, and I'm going to say it again, that I think discernment is very important. But most happy people are trusting of their fellow man to a certain extent. They believe that people are good, versus assuming everybody is out to get them. Okay. Thank you, Julia. She says her feed keeps dropping on Facebook Live, so she's switching over to Blog Talk Radio. You all are certainly welcome to do that. That's just fine. And thank you for telling me what was going on. I can't tell what's going on from my point of view. It looks like we had 2 Facebooks that went down and then they came right back up again. But, maybe not. Thank you for telling me. People that are happy tend to be discerning, but generally open to a certain extent, and friendly toward others. And happy people certainly foster a sense of community around them, and they meet new people with an open heart. Now, energetically, I want to put something on the table that I've noticed for years, and worked on, by the way, with individuals. Many people are too open on the outside, what they present to the world. They're way too open. We call these people sometimes naive, vulnerable people, right? But the interesting thing is they're closed on the inside. They're closed to learning more. They're closed to knowing themselves. They're closed to moving. They're closed to accepting change and growth and opportunity. But they're open on the outside. And these people are kind of buffeted around. They are total reactors, you see? Because the opposite should be true energetically. We should be open on the inside, and by that I mean saying yes to the possibilities of this wonderful world and all of our options. And we should be discerning, not closed, but discerning on the outside. And I find this, hello, Jackie. She says, I've been going to a job that I don't like. It's just taking over me. Yeah, 2 years. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, darling. Yes, let's listen to the show. Let's see if we can't get over some of these things. And certainly, you can write me through, I hope, through my website. I keep telling people to write me through my website, and I'm just going to give you my email right now, guys. It is Martha Novak. What is it? It's just Martha@marthanovak.com. So if you can't get through with my website, by all means, write me. There's help all around. Certainly this is what I do, and this is what other people do. We're supposed to get you through your fear. I've trained a lot of people. Please go to the website and see some of these brilliant healers that are on there, that are guides and will help you do this. Some of them have studied with me for as much as 18 years. Most all of them have studied at least 14 to 18 years with me. So they're good at what they do, or I wouldn't put them on. So going back to this, it's very important that you first of all, I think a really important note to this is that you choose good friends, that you don't have toxic people around you. We all outgrow people. That doesn't mean, I don't mean that in any narcissistic way, but if you are going somewhere, someone that doesn't want to go there tends to drop away. It doesn't mean you can't still love them and care for them. It means they get to choose their life path and you get to choose yours. All right? I think it's extremely important that we use discernment as a second point and realize that everybody's got an agenda. Our favorite people, of course, are the ones that share an agenda. You know, we both want to get somewhere. Isn't that wonderful? Or we both want to learn this, or we both want to find out who God really is in us, and in the world, or when agendas match, even if it's agendas at work or agendas in a family, wow, that's a really wonderful thing. If agendas don't match, we need to know how to work it out or not. There are some things that should just drop by the wayside. So this is very important for us to realize that we've got some learning experiences here. In my opinion, I don't think anybody's born into the world and grows up that knows how to work through the problems. It's something that we have to learn as part of our emotional maturity. A lot of people will avoid problems instead of dealing with them and learning how to deal with them. And that's honestly what consciousness work is all about. If you find it with all these problems that we talk about in a session, if you find out really there's nothing to be afraid of, there's just some things to move on and some things not to avoid anymore, and here's how to deal with it, what is there to be afraid of ultimately? You see? There's really nothing to be afraid of. And yet our ego child's mind says, be afraid, be very afraid of just about everything. Another point is I think it's a wonderful and really great thing to give people the benefit of the doubt. However, we do that several times, or if you're in a marriage, you learn to do that and work through the problems. But we must not be naive. We must replace naivety with discernment. Okay. Next point is you do need to know when to walk away. There's something more important than staying or going, and that is your growth. Your growth. What can you do? Okay? I'm hearing a little noise. So if someone is listening to me on the 917 exchange, do look on my website, marthanovak.com, and go to either the Blog Talk Radio or the Facebook Live feed. I'm going to ask you to do that because I'm hearing a little noise on this line. So I'm going to get off. And my fifth point of that is something I've said, but I'm going to repeat it. Learn to work through your problems. Nobody knows how to do it, so don't vilify yourself and say, I don't know how to work through these problems. Get some ideas, because you're seeing it in a very myopic way. You're seeing it as ego child's mind. If you don't think you have options, you've got options. Jackie, you have options here. Okay, but you've got to, they don't lie in your fear-based experience. You also are a much better experience than that. And that's why you called into a show today like this. I mean, you wrote in. So thank you so much for doing so. Let me see if I have any other points on that, because I think I do. And yes, I found an article that said, and these are not my words, that chronically unhappy people allow toxic people to take up space in their lives. I'm going to then change that a little bit. They allow toxic people to take up energy. You know, I have people calling to me from time to time and saying, oh, is this person the one? And there is no one, you know. Is it who you choose? That's what Spirit's going to say. I don't know. Is this the person you choose? But what I am interested in seeing is how much energy this person is going to take up from your life. Because there are people that will take under 10%. And there are people that are going to take almost all of it. And I don't want to be married to someone like that, you know. So I want you all to be very discerning. And oh, well, thank you so much, Jackie. You're a dear heart. So we have to be willing to allow some of these people to come and go. Chronically unhappy people certainly do not allow things to change. Now, you know, a toxic person is in your life for a reason. You invited them in. Yes, you did. You might it may be a parent. We've chosen, in my belief system, the parents that we have for a reason. You're not supposed to stay there and be chronically unhappy. When you can, you're supposed to learn what you can about how you don't want to be and move on. There are many people that are still caring for a toxic parent. Will limit your time with them. You know, do what you need to do to protect yourself. And you have to either, you can not see them ever again if you can live with that. But if you can't live with that, you've got to take care of your time and your energy as you care for them. Now, I want to go back to something other than toxic people. Unhappy people are distrustful of most of the people they meet and assume that all strangers can't be trusted. I happen to know a woman who throws herself into very bad job situations, and these people are take advantage of her. All right, pardon me, I've got the hiccups now. She allows that to happen. And that perpetuates her distrust of people. It's evidence, isn't it? When if she were more discriminating and more discerning when she took the job and made sure she had the right one around really nice, good people and didn't tolerate that in her life anymore, she would not perpetuate her issue, which is the distrust of people that she needs, she thinks, because everybody is so darn mean to her. That was what her childhood was like, by the way. So how is this not her story? You can't answer that because it is, right? A behavior like this, not trusting other people, starts to close the door on any true, here's the word again, connection. So attachments take their place. Attachments that are not deep and not fulfilling and not lasting, and by the way, are not reciprocal. You see? You form attachments because you may need that person, because you don't think you can take care of yourself. And yet you don't trust people. You have created a situation where you don't trust people. So the only thing to do is to isolate and withdraw, which cuts you off from any connection that you could have, you see. We need to do that differently. So how do you do it differently? Well, I gave you some choices. You choose better friends. You use discernment. You give people the benefit of the doubt several times. You make sure that if it's a marriage partner, because you're going to have to give the benefit of the doubt every time unless you get divorced or unless you're chronically unhappy, that you choose well. I have people calling into that show. They're all airy-fairy about people. Guys, don't be airy-fairy about people. That's ridiculous. This influences the rest of your life. It actually doesn't influence your happiness, but in the ego child's mind, it does. You see? All right. Now, let's go on with some of these other points that Ms. or Dr. Starr has made. Number 3. Unhappy people concentrate on what's wrong in this world rather than what's right. But there's something that I'm going to add to that that's much more insidious. They concentrate on what's wrong with them, rather than what's right with them. Now, that's much more insidious, in my opinion, because that's in place. That's the whole reason they concentrate on what's wrong with the world instead of what's right. There has to be a balance, and balance goes out the window when you have this issue that is chronic. Look, you know, nobody's naive here. There's plenty wrong with this world in terms of, and I use that in quotes, there's plenty that's out of balance here, right? But unhappy people turn a blind eye to actually what's right in this world and focus solely on what's wrong. They're the ones complaining and responding to any positive attributes in our world with the wonderful phrase, yeah, but. Now, this is true for you. Let's take it to a personal level for a moment. I can't tell you how many people I've seen with this in private practice. By the way, they're all finished with it now. But when I make a choice of change, when I lay some really wonderful options for them on the table, they have a very, very powerful statement. It is the statement that they all make as if it were written in the sky, like Surrender Dorothy. You remember from The Wizard of Oz? They read it off the sky. It says, yeah, but... And they give me all the negatives about why they can't do that. There is no yeah, but. There is nobody to thwart you. Do you believe in thwarts? Well, let me tell you, there's only one person thwarting you, and that is you. And all this shows when you're concentrating on what's wrong with you or with the world is, instead of what's right, is that it's a life out of balance. You've learned to think negatively. It helps you not be disappointed. In some ironic, distorted way you're thinking, it keeps you safe, and you won't be disappointed if you disappoint yourself. You see? Stop that. Because this is just a perception that's bringing you what you're thinking. because like attracts like in this world. This is how you communicate with the universe. What you think is what you get. What you think is what you get. I know a woman who is just precious, and she says she's working on herself all the time. She works so hard, and yet her life does not show it. What do you think is going on? Yeah, it's for show. It's a presentation, isn't it? And we have to break that down before she can really be authentic and allow incredibly wonderful abundance and authenticity and honesty in. She's got to learn to be emotionally honest with herself. She tries to make herself so much better than she thinks she is. But the irony is, she is wonderful. You see? The yeah buts will get us every time. Chronically unhappy people always respond with a list of reasons that something you suggest can't happen or won't happen. You know, we have to be careful of that. So I want to urge you to look at this instead of you looking at what's wrong with the world right now. Look at what you think is wrong with you. Now, here's a remarkable exercise I'm going to suggest to you. What's your worst attribute? Think of it right now. What's your absolutely worst attribute? Are you weak? Are you old? All these perceptions, by the way. Are you unloving? Are you selfish? What are you? Think of the worst thing you are. And let me ask you, you ready for the next question? Is that all you are? Now, those of you that are listening to this show are smart. And you're going to say, no, that's not all I am. But what I'm wanting to put on the table right now for you is when you are in your dark moods, you're focusing only on that. You're saying that's all you are. And if you do that too much, of course you're unhappy. I'd be unhappy too. Because that is not at all what you are. You're not seeing your life as the balanced whole, as the whole. We started out as the undeveloped whole. That's why everything is in us. When we're kids, we're the undeveloped whole. We're the undeveloped idea of love, right? That's why we're so vulnerable to all these issues and survival and trying to negotiate in the world. And they're all good. They keep us alive. That's what they were supposed to do. But until we were 7 or 8 years old. There's a secondary patterning that happens right after that until around 12 to 14 years old. And that reinforces those first issues. And we're cooked like a fine Christmas goose at that time. Right? And it isn't until we're in our 20s that our brains develop. And we start asking questions. We start rejecting some of these old patterns. We start noticing them. We start noticing these beliefs. And as we get older and our brain develops more and we see more people and we are exposed to more information, we go, wait a minute. There's more. Well, guys, there's not more when you're in these times. You're focusing on what's wrong. And we can work on who I am. Everything is right. Oh, it's just wonderful. I'm so different this week than I've ever been. Keep telling. I'm delaying because Facebook went down again. That you won't realize how right you are until you stop pretending. You got to really sit with who you are. I want to say that, and I want to go back to global problems a minute. I think very much that happy people are aware of the global issues that are going on. The more you are self-aware, the more you are aware of what people are doing out there in the world. And I urge you to see what's right too. You can't just see what's wrong. Many times we use some of these social issues of all kinds, as a venue for our unresolved anger, and that makes us less credible. We need to be very credible. We need to speak about these issues and what we believe, not with fantasy, not with a blind eye, but with awareness and discernment and compassion. How do you reach compassion? Well, you better have it for yourself first. Just like this issue that we're talking about right now, you need to see what's right with you and what you're going to be fixing as well. I don't like the words right and wrong myself, but the good points as well as some of the points that need to be challenged and corrected. Happy people seem to see the news and the world as not all good and bad. They see it in balance. But unhappy people really tend to see everything as very fear-based, through their fear-based experience. And they see what's wrong and how they'd like it to be. Now, here is a big point that she does not make, but I will. We've got to learn to tolerate uncertainty, because none of this is working out right now, and it won't probably in our lifetimes. Okay? I think that the more consciousness that's in the world, the more we are open to seeing balance, and the more we will work for that balance, and the more the world will change. That's why I do what I do, okay? But I don't know any other way to fix this. Now, that's just me. Maybe you will. I hope you do. But don't fool yourselves, okay? This starts with the individual and the individual's perspective. And there needs to be a perspective on the whole and not just the parts. All right, moving along. Number 4. Unhappy people. Let's start with unhappy people. Unhappy people compare themselves to others and harbor jealousy and resentment. They might believe that someone's good fortune steals from their own. And I will add that this is a deprivation mentality, a lack mentality. It comes straight out of the egoic child's mind. There's a selfishness connected with it, insecurity connected with it, and this is a very emotionally immature place to be. All of these things that we're talking about today are part. Unhappiness itself, unless it's momentary, is part of our, certainly chronic happiness is part of our egoic child's mind story. So that's what needs to be challenged. And all of this selfishness and the deprivation mentality and our insecurity, all of this is part of our emotional immaturity, which is part of our story, which is part of the past. Okay. Unhappy people believe that your good fortune steals from their own. They believe that there's not enough goodness or abundance or talent or whatever to go around. This is absolutely the staying in the ego child's mind and the cutting off of that divine inspiration, that marvelous thing that is always going to produce for you. And they constantly compare. Now, this is the real narcissism, isn't it? Because I am either better than you. Now, this is what narcissism does, or I'm worse than you. By the way, any kind of narcissist actually has those two things going on. However, there are 3 kinds of narcissists, and I don't find that trait to be true in the toxic narcissism. If you are interested more in some of these traits of narcissism, by all means, go back and listen to that show, because we've done one, I think, on narcissism. Happy people know that if someone else has a success, they can too. If they learn enough and develop themselves enough, that they too can be successful. And I think that happy people, certainly conscious people, maybe not everybody, but conscious people, certainly believe that they're born with a unique blueprint that can't be duplicated or stolen from. It's who they are. They have things that they're supposed to bring into the world. And this, by the way, is everybody. But it is whether you have the perception of it or not. Because everybody is born here for a reason. We have a purpose. We have several purposes, as a matter of fact, that depend on where in life we are. Hello, Peter. Well, thank you, darling. I'm glad you like the show. That means a lot to me. Thank you. I think happy people believe in unlimited possibilities, but here's the rub. Not in fantasy. You remember, I say this almost every show, that fantasy is its own reward. You go there so you don't have to deal with the reality of life. We want to shatter fantasy. Fantasy is not a good thing to have. And here's the truth about fantasy. When reality comes smacking up against fantasy, it will several times in your life, you're devastated. So the best thing, the thing that is in your best interest, is to challenge fantasy, to tear it down, and to replace it with reality and a real assessment of your talents, gifts, and abilities, and your desire to be motivated to learn more, do more, be more, in every situation. Make your mistakes. Mistakes aren't a bad thing. If you're going to make 10 decisions, let me tell you, about 3 or 4 of them are going to be mistakes. Learn from them. Then they're not mistakes anymore, right? Some of these things we're trapped in. We're afraid to make mistakes because we had punishment when we were kids from our parents when we made mistakes. And now, believe it or not, in a very sophisticated way, you are punishing yourself for making mistakes. And one of the ways you punish yourself is to not realize what a mistake is. Just a great experience to learn from and to implement and to go on with. Another's good fortune does not limit your possible outcomes in life. There is nothing to thwart you. Do you believe that somebody can thwart you or that anybody can stop you? Well, in a way, you're right, because it's you. Now, self-awareness makes you go, how am I doing that? If you're believing that so-and-so or this circumstance or this company stops you, you are not thinking in a large enough picture, because you can change all that. You can grow past them. You can leave. You can do. You can say, well, I'm sorry they feel that way, and go on anyway, right? And what this show is about, and other shows, are about recognizing you're the only one that can stop you. And this is how you create your own luck. There's no such thing as some arbitrary luck out there. You create that. You create it. So let go of the old script where you weren't good at it, because that ending of that script, and I'm talking about your life story, has already been written. Now, I am not real keen on creating another story, like a lot of psychology books will tell you, because that's just a step along the way. All right, create another story, that's fine. It often is fantasy. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I believe in being more and more conscious of your story and getting so sick of it that you put it down and you live in the moment in a mindful way, and you are in full cooperation and deliberation with God and in your highest self, not your ego child's mind, and that you are putting forth this moment as a marvelous moment. You're either learning something, you're doing something that you enjoy, you're researching, you're doing something that expands you and taking you forward. I believe in this moment. It's not going to come again. My husband and I tease a lot whenever we get grouchy or anything like that. We all say, wait a minute, hold it. Hold it. Let's put this moment in perspective. It's not going to come again. We'll never be in these clothes, saying these things, with this scenery, and in this underwear. So we better clean this moment up. We always say, and in this underwear. It's just us being bad. Let's move on with Ms. Dr. Starr's next point. Number 5, they strive. That's a big word. They strive to control life. But that you have any control at all, control in the egoic child's mind sense, is a fantasy. You're doing things that you are exerting, you're trying to control things, and it's fantasy because there is no control in that way. There's no control in any way. Once you really are in the ascended mind and you're working from the arena of consciousness, you are in cooperation. There's no control. There's cooperation and learning and abundance and choices to make and pleasure to be had and problems to problem solve through. But it's not control. There's deliberation, there's deliberate action and deliberate thought. There's awareness, but not striving to control. Striving is a egoic child's mind word if I've ever heard it. This woman, this is another example of why I change words from time to time and change the thoughts that are very good and presented as they are. But you don't strive to be a better person, you know? No, you don't strive to be a better person because that implies that you're full of some sort of pretense. No, you are learning and growing and opening to deeper levels of self. And then you are, I guarantee. There's a difference between control and doing what it takes to achieve your goals. Happy people take steps to achieve their goals and realize that in the end, there is no point to egoic control. It just is so much spinning. And because it's spinning, it limits you and it limits your thinking, which you're going to create from, because it's a loop. It's not going somewhere. It's a loop because it's fear-based. You're doing the same things over and over again and trying to control your situation and other people and what they think, right? When anybody doesn't get along with someone else, one of the first things I look at is what do you want from them that they're not doing? And why isn't it all right that they're not doing it? You see, it is all right. Every excuse you can come up with is an egoic child's mind excuse. It makes me feel uncomfortable. I want them to go with me. They could be so much happier if they do this, right? But we all have a right to our own lives. I wouldn't want people making decisions for me about how I live or how I die. And I think you would agree with the same. Therefore, we have to afford that choice, that way people live to everyone else. We can't control life, and our need to control comes right out of our fear-based experience of the egoic child's mind. Unhappy people, she goes on to say, tend to micromanage in an effort to control all outcomes. And she herself says they fall apart when life throws a wrench into their experience. And I'll say that one of the reasons they fall apart is it's all been a fantasy. It has been a fantasy, ladies and gentlemen, that you can control anything and anybody is a fantasy. Now, here's the interesting thing. You can certainly influence, For example, I also am a corporate coach, and I work with a lot of businesses, and I hear a lot of presentations, and the unsuccessful presentations are the ones that leave out something, which is, what's the advantage to the person you're trying to sell? Why should they buy it? Sometimes they will make it all about it. My department needs, I need, we need, okay? And they don't realize what they're doing, because that's not how to sell anything. How you sell something is to make it a very pleasurable experience. You have to genuinely care about the other person, and you have to make the change easy for them. In other words, you have to already figure it out. Now, you can write those things down and take those to the bank. That's how to influence. And it's always got to be, you've got to list the advantages to them. And if I were you, I'm just giving you all my tips, I would also tear down anything that could possibly be their objections. So what I mean is anticipate their objections and say, that's not a real objection because of this. You see? You say it first. So all they have to say at the end is, okay. That's what you're going for. Now, that's a lovely thing. When I know that I've coached someone in something like that, in a presentation, I know that we have done everything we can. And that makes you feel real good if they do say no, but most of the time, in truth, they say yes. So a lot of times, we're trying to control things because we don't know some of those points that I've just said. There are a lot of points about everything that I'm not going into today, but about consciousness itself, other options that we must learn, kids. We must learn. Nobody has taught them to us as we go. They're part of the developed mind. They're part of the mature, emotionally mature experience, you see? Okay. Let's see if there's anything else I'm supposed to pick up here. Yes, she says the key here is to be goal-oriented and focused, and to allow crap to happen without falling apart. But here, I want to say I don't think that's the key. I think the real key in consciousness development is to learn to cooperate with your highest self. For example, you go and you make a presentation, it falls apart, you don't get what you want. What'd you do? Don't do that next time. Let's do something else. That's what I mean. Life does teach us. It isn't about whether we got that or not. It's about what you learn from it. What are you going to do next time? Not the vilification of self. That's focusing on what you did wrong. Well, there is no wrong. Learn from it and do something else to get a different result next time. And don't be so upset if you do this smash bang up presentation with all these notes and more that I've just given you in it, and they still say no. Why isn't that all right? It is, if you're just not proprietary about it, if you will allow for other experiences. They may know some things that you don't. They come from a background too that you didn't come from. They have their issues as well. We've given them every opportunity, and this is what a good speech does, to rise to their highest self. Whether they do or not is their business, and we have to be all right with that, you see? You always have the choice, by the way, of leaving and starting something else, like Jackie. Good for you. Okay? Nothing traps you but your fear. Okay. She goes on to make a point, which I agree with, that happy people experience fear and worry, but they make the distinction, as she says, between living it and feeling it. I don't like the way she says that. I want to say that it's the difference between experiencing it as a temporary thing and whether it has crossed into your pathology and you define yourself as a fearful and worried person. I'll say that in a related issue, that anxiety is sometimes a good thing, and I'm going to tell you the advantage to anxiety. If you've got your pencil and paper in front of you, or pen and paper in front of you, and you draw a vertical line, just draw a vertical line. Put at the bottom the ego child's mind, fear-based self. Put at the top the love-centered highest self. Put an arrow on that vertical line, midway. Put that arrow up, and put that arrow down. Now, here's my point in asking you to draw that construct. When you've got your intention set for higher consciousness, and knowing some of this and putting it in your life, don't you want a sign that tells you you're going in the wrong direction? You're going toward the ego child's mind and the fear-based experience? Well, that's what anxiety is there for. We do not feel anxiety when you're going in the other direction. But when you have your mind set for higher thought, for the authentic self, for being the spiritual being that you are in physical form, which we, by the way, all are, when you go the other way, when you start narrowing your focus, when you only see what's wrong, when you only are doing those kinds of activities which your human grants you, but not in your best interest, you're going to feel anxiety. Anxiety is a marvelous signpost that says, check where you're going. You just had a thought, you just had a feeling, you've had multiple ones today, and they've all gone that way instead of that way. You understand? It's a great exercise. But you've got to first acknowledge your anxiety. I have had a client for years who did not acknowledge her anxiety, and she didn't sleep because of it. She never slept. She was working all this out in her waked state because she was so anxious. She never acknowledged any of this. Soon as we got her to acknowledge, she started sleeping. You see? We can't ignore ourselves, ladies and gentlemen. We can't avoid these moments that might upset us. We have to deal with them right then. Jackie wrote. Yeah. Well, and there's another point to this too, Jackie. Thank you so much. She was saying that she was feeling anxiety when she felt, when she thought of doing something good. Now, here's something interesting. That can mean several things, not just what I am putting on the table. For example, in psychology, a lot of times in our child's mind, what we have done is we've taken something good and made it in our perception bad, and we've taken something bad and we've made it in our perception good. Do you need an example of that? All right, let me see if I can give you one. I'm going on the fly here. If you are unhappy at work and you go home and you drink a bottle of wine to numb yourself out, you are using something that really isn't in your best interest, because that much wine every single day is going to hurt your liver. You're making something that is actually destroying yourself good because it soothes you, instead of learning other ways to do this, like getting out of that job. So you've made something bad good. All right? Psychology is tricky, guys. When we are really down in the depths of you, it's a tricky thing. All right, something good that you make bad. Let's say that you let me find a better example than that one. Give me another one. Let's say that you are an athlete, and you're really a good athlete, but that you were reared in a family that did not emphasize your athleticism. They didn't understand it. They weren't athletes, but they emphasized the academic performance. And so you have grown up now, and you work too hard. You overwork because you're trying to secretly win approval from the father. The father might be long since dead, and you never get to the gym. Okay, and you're saying, oh no, all this work is good. All this work is good. You know, you don't get anywhere without work, right? But you are ignoring your balance. You have made something that is good for you bad. You understand? Okay. So that's another thing that can happen here, Jackie, that in our psychology, we've got some things mixed up. The other thing that can happen is that all the plans are not in place yet. And psychologically, we know it. It's just that we haven't admitted it to ourselves yet. There may be more information that you need to get. There may be more pitfalls you need to see. You may need to take a job at one of these places and see the good and the bad and the indifferent and what you would do that's different. And take those ideas and not copy them, but see how you're going to add value in a different way. You might, you seem to be someone to me that has her pulse on what people might want. So you have to incorporate that they may not have even thought of, you see. So those are all the reasons we can be anxious about it. But here's what all of them have in common. Anxiety is trying to tell you something. It's actually just a sign. And we get so afraid of having anxiety, we don't ever say, okay, I'm anxious, there's the sign. Now, what does that mean to me? That's where the power is. That's what we want you to do. All right? Okay. I think I'm only going to have time for one more of these, and I'm going to continue this lesson next week, if that's all right with everybody. I think we've got some very important things to still say, so let's continue this show next week. Number 6, according to Ms. Dr. Starr, they consider their future with worry and fear. Unhappy people fill their thoughts with what could go wrong all the time instead of what could go right. They think of various scenarios about that. For anybody that is looking at this, it certainly shows an insecurity. They don't think that they know how to handle their problems. And I want to give you an exercise right now that I think will help you with this, if you recognize this. I did this for my advanced class about a year ago, and people have been referring to it ever since, so I hope it'll mean something to you. Think of a worst case scenario. Your husband dying, your wife dying, losing a partner, running out of money, losing your job, whatever it is, think of it and write it down. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do is when we get off the air, which will be in 5 minutes, what I want you to do is then do a step-by-step plan of what you would do if that happens. Because the fearful thing here is, what would I do if I lost my partner? Okay? Now, I'm not minimizing any of these things that happen in life. I'm not minimizing that. I'm not making fun of that. Don't think I am. I am saying drop the drama and let's have a plan. Prove to yourself there's a plan. Who would you call if you had a traffic accident that was horrific? Do you have something in your wallet that says, if something happens to me, call this person? Put several phone numbers down there if you need to. Do you have a knowledge about who to call? Who would you call? First, second, and third. Who would you have called if you couldn't call? Who needs to be called to come and take care of your animals or your children? Put them down on this list. Think of every eventuality, ladies and gentlemen, and that's your plan. Oh, darling. Yes. Oh, Jackie. Sweetheart, I'm so sorry about that. You know, that would trigger it, wouldn't it? It would trigger. Jackie was sharing that she lost her 24-year-old son in 2016. You know, Jackie, when I get off the phone, I'm certainly going to pray for you, and I want other folks to share because we've got a community here. You know, we really do. We may not know what each other looks like and share things, but we are sharing deeper things in this forum than most people share in a year. So we talk about everything here. So we certainly can pray for each other and have everyone's best interest at heart here. I'm awfully sorry about that. And I want to share with you, I think the anxiety that comes up after that, that experience is showing you that there were deeper anxieties that you did not ever address before your dear son died. When we have a trauma like this that you're describing, or a terrible traffic accident, or something else, oftentimes fears, when we're ill, fears come up that we have not addressed. That's what that's about. It isn't that there was something in that trauma that you haven't addressed. Maybe you have, maybe you have not. But it's what was not addressed even before that. Thank you, darling. Thank you so much. That's so sweet of you to say. And I'm genuinely trying to help here, as you all know. So I hope it will do so. But I think that that is a natural process, that anxiety comes up once you have a trauma like that. And you have a wonderful opportunity, my dear, to go back and to say, all right, this happened. What are the elements of me that I've left behind
90
now?
seconds.
Oh, my word. Okay, she's saying 90 seconds. That I need to go back and address. What are the things along the way that I need to address that I had not before this happened, that are now up and on the table? Let's do a prayer. Thank you, dear God, for all of this. We so appreciate this wonderful group of people that are a deep and abiding and loving community here as we do our work
60 seconds
on ourselves. Thank